Hello and welcome to the Palmore Institute's video lesson series. My name is Lowell and today we will be looking at Chapter 3 in our senior reading course. So let's begin. In this particular lesson, we will be looking at Unit 3 in our textbook Password 4, 3rd edition, and the title of the unit is A Language on the Move. Our learning goal for this lesson is to learn about English as the international language of business. And to start with, looking at our title, A Language on the Move, it might not be so clear what is meant by this. So, what do we mean by to be on the move? To be on the move is a verb phrase meaning to be moving from one location to another or to be progressing or advancing. And with many titles of chapters or essays, oftentimes these titles will have two different meanings, and in many cases both can apply. So, with our warm-up question, when, where, and why do people from your country use English to do business? Looking at that first picture, what do you think? Well, in business meetings. If you're working abroad and you work with international companies, there's a reasonable likelihood you might be using English in business meetings. Okay, how about for our next picture? When meeting new clients or customers, if you're working in an international business world, oftentimes you'll have to meet new clients or customers. How about this one? At conferences, you go to some international conferences, people from around the world may be using English as a lingua franca. And of course, while traveling. Okay, and how about this one now? In attending seminars, oftentimes when you travel to foreign seminars, they'll often be held in English. Or when working at international companies, English might be the language used in the office. And of course, when socializing, English can be very practical. Or when sending emails to foreign clients or customers, or when calling customers or clients. Though many Japanese may have few opportunities to use English outside the classroom, there are many possible situations, particularly when traveling abroad on business or when maintaining business relationships with foreign or international company staff, where having a reasonable grasp of English can be useful. Outside Japan, not so many people know or are able to speak Japanese. Therefore, English as a lingua franca can be a tool to do business around the world, especially when you consider that most of the people who use English are not native speakers of the language. So if you do business in China or in Korea, you might end up having to use English, for example. Okay, let's take a look at some vocabulary. And for this task, I'd like you to match the vocabulary words and phrases on the left-hand side with the definitions. You can pause the video and match 1 through 5 with A, B, C, D, and E. Okay, let's take a look at a few more. And please match 6 through 10 with the definitions F, G, H, I, and J. You can pause the video. Okay, let's review the answers for that task. Okay, number 1, to deal with someone. It's a verb phrase meaning to make business agreements with someone. It usually means to solve a problem with someone, but in this context, in our reading passage, it means to do business with people. Number two, to be dubbed into something. It's a verb phrase meaning to have actors' words changed and said in another language. It's usually done with voice actors. Number three, feminine. It's an adjective of or belonging to the class of words that ordinarily includes most of the words referring to women. Usually, this adjective refers to having female traits, but this can also be used as a grammatical term for describing languages or parts of languages. So number four, masculine. Similarly, of or belonging to the class of words that ordinarily includes most of the words referring to men. That's also an adjective. Usually masculine refers to having male traits, but it can be used to describe words in a language as well. Number five, neuter. It's an adjective of or belonging to the class of words that ordinarily includes most of the words referring to things that are neither masculine nor feminine, or gender neutral, so to speak. So not feminine, not masculine. And for number six, the verb phrase, to name just a few, means to provide only a few examples, though there are many from which to choose. Number seven, the Industrial Revolution. It's a noun phrase. The major social and economic changes that occurred in Britain, Europe, and the United States in the 18th and 19th centuries, late 18th century, early 19th centuries, when new machinery, new sources of power, and new ways of manufacturing products were developed. For example, train lines and factories. Number eight, to take something's place. It's a verb phrase meaning to be used instead of something else. And number nine, to come to power. It's a verb phrase meaning to gain some degree of political control, as through election or appointment. And finally, number 10, to be here to stay. It's a verb phrase meaning to have stopped becoming unusual and become generally used or accepted. Okay, for our reading passage, you may want to turn on the captions if you haven't done so already. Alternatively, you could use this as a listening task and replay it with captions to check your listening comprehension. As you listen to the following reading passage, try to identify the answer to the following question. How did English become the international language of business? Okay, let's begin. A language on the move. Feliz Yilmaz works for a company in Istanbul and usually speaks Turkish at work. When she travels to England on business, she deals with people there in English. But when she goes to Germany or Brazil, she doesn't use German or Portuguese. Again, she uses English. I use English in Japan and Thailand too, she says. It's the language of international business. How did English get to be so widely used? It's not the oldest living language or the most beautiful to the ear. It has sounds that are hard to pronounce and words that are hard to spell. So why has this particular language spread so far? Some people would answer by pointing to the influence of movies and music. However, films made in English often appear dubbed into other languages, and many people enjoy songs in English without understanding the words. So the question remains. Part of the answer can be found in the nature of the language. English has certain qualities that make it useful. For one thing, its grammar is quite simple, making it easier to learn. For example, learners of English don't have to worry about whether a noun is masculine, feminine, or neuter, while learners of many other languages do. In German, for example, der Mond, the word for the moon, is masculine, but die Sonne, the sun, is feminine. Anyone would expect the words for girl and woman, das Mädchen and das Weib, to be feminine, but they are neuter. English also has a huge vocabulary. Early English developed from Germanic languages, which gave it its most common words, such as the, is, of, go, you, man, and woman. English has always taken words from other European languages, too, including Latin, attract, design, and invent, and Greek, alphabet, mathematics, and theater. After 1066, when invaders from France came to power in England, English gained many French words, such as officer, crime, and service. Since that time, English has welcomed words from many other languages: Spanish, Arabic, Turkish, Urdu, Chinese, and Japanese, to name just a few. To understand the spread of English, we also have to look at political and economic history. During the 1600s and 1700s, people from England traveled all over the world, taking their language to North America, Africa, India, and Australia. New nations were born, and their governments used English. Then in the 1800s, England led the Industrial Revolution, and London became the world's great financial center. That made English the language of money. In the 1900s, it also became the language of science and air travel. Then came the internet. As Falaise Yilmaz remembers it, people at my company realized that the internet could be quite useful to us, but at first, everything online was in English. It gave us another reason to know this language. Soon, business people in many countries were going online and using English more and more. Today, there are business schools teaching all of their courses in English, even in countries where English is a foreign language. These schools want their students to be ready to do business in international markets. Companies around the world are investing in English classes for their employees. They believe English will be the language of the future. Today, there are about 400 million native speakers of English. While many more people speak Mandarin Chinese, about 900 million, few of them are outside China. People who speak English, on the other hand, live and work all over the world. There are more than 1.5 billion people who speak it as a second, third, or fourth language. Yilmaz says, with so many people using English, I can't imagine any other language taking its place. I think English for business is here to stay. Okay, so let's think about that. Hopefully from your notes, you're able to pencil in a few ideas. How did English become the international language of business? You can pause the video if you like. Okay, let's take a look at the answer. English spread around the world for political and economic reasons starting in the 1600s with people traveling from England. And during the 1800s, London became the world's great financial center. English went on to become the language of science and air travel worldwide, and at first, it was the language of the internet. In addition, certain qualities of the language helped achieve its status as the international language of business. Its simple grammar, its large vocabulary, and the ease with which it adopted words from other languages. Okay, now maybe some of you are wondering, English grammar being simple, that's a point that could be debated. Compared to some languages like Spanish, English can be quite complex because there are many rules and exceptions to rules. However, that's the argument made in the reading passage. So let's take a look at our homework for this lesson. If you have the textbook and haven't read it yet, please read and review pages 25 to 35 in your textbook. Number two, if you haven't attended class, please do the exercises starting from pages 27 to 34. If you have attended class, please finish any exercises that you did not complete in class. Ooh, that should be number 4. If you're a current Palmore student, please choose 10 new words and phrases from chapter 3 and type 10 sentences using the vocabulary. You can email it to Palmore or hand it to your instructor, who will check it and give you feedback on your sentences. And you can also do the optional online activities through the Password 4 online workbooks. Well, thank you very much for listening. If you have any comments, feel free to leave them below. Until next time.